Hi everyone, it's Nicole for Simon Says Stamp with a couple of one-layer encouragement style cards featuring the March 2019 Simon Says Stamp card kit. Today I am using the large 6x8 amazing stamp set from the kit and also available for individual purchase to create these one-layer designs. I'm also going to be using some of the sequins and things from the kit as well as the Lucky ink pad from the kit to stamp some of the elements. I then pulled out some of my other favorite Simon Says Stamp die inks. We're going to use Key Lime, Lucky, the one that's in the kit, Mint, Scuba, High Dive, Blue Jay, Island Blue, Soft Navy, and Blue Violet. I kind of call these my ocean colors. I was very much inspired by the Lucky ink included in the kit, and from there I just kind of picked and chose some of the other inks from my stash to create this kind of ombre effect type of background with all these circle shapes in the stamp set. The stamp set has lots of great circular shapes and then lots of fantastic sentiments that you can mix and match. So I'm building all of my circles first. Some of them I'm even doing a little two-tone stamping on, especially with the Mint and Scuba inks. So kind of two-tone little circular shapes. Really fun. If you wanted to, before you remove the stamps from your MISTI and move on to the next grouping of stamps or whatever it might be, you could stamp multiple panels at one time. My backgrounds are not the same. I stamp them a little bit different. There's elements that are similar, but I didn't do them exactly the same. But if you wanted to create a whole set of cards, it would be really easy to do that just by simply stamping multiple backgrounds at once. I did use a MISTI rather than acrylic blocks so that I could stamp the image more than once if I needed to. So where I did the ombre effect there on one of the circles, I really kind of needed to do that. There's other areas throughout that maybe the first stamping wasn't super great, and so by being able to stamp it again, I'm able to get a much nicer image. This is another example of that. All these little teeny tiny dots. Love this shape. Very, very fun. My images kind of go from green and aquas to mint colors and then blues and navies. That was my thinking back behind this, and I'm even going to use these colorful inks for my sentiment. Before I finished either background, I had pre-planned where I want to put my sentiment. I want part of it to overlap a circular shape here and there, but I don't want to try to stamp it over a huge grouping of circles, if that makes sense. I want some of it to be in some nice white space so that it really shows up. This is especially important since I am using the colorful inks rather than black ink to stamp my sentiments. I think if you would choose to use a black ink over this instead, you could probably stamp over the circles a little bit easier, or it'd be a little bit more readable, if you will, with a black ink over these inks. So I'm simply moving my background around. I did leave this in the video. I really wanted to show how I built the background, how I added some of the solid circle shapes to some of the open circle shapes. Now up at the top, the green image that I stamped at the very beginning, I added a little circle in the middle of it and I really don't like it. So I am going to fix that here in a minute without redoing the whole background. Love watching this come together. You could do this with so many color combinations too. Rainbow would of course be beautiful. If you want to do maybe pinks and reds, yellows, oranges, those kind of color combinations, that would be beautiful. Maybe do some purples and blues or purples and aquas. So many things to do. So here I'm going to take the larger circle, not the largest solid circle, but the next largest one, and I'm going to stamp that over. And you're going to be able to kind of see that smaller circle underneath, but I'm going to disguise that with a jewel here in a little bit. Have just a few more little things to finish, small circles in the centers, a few additional little stamped images. I think I'm going to fill in the circle at the bottom and stamp a half circle in my blue violet color, and then we can move on to stamping the sentiment and embellishing. Our background is almost complete. I do want to add just a little bit of a darker, kind of just a little crescent shape down here at the bottom, or a half circle, I guess. I need to use my larger MISTI. It was hanging off the edge too much of the other one. That is going to work much better. And the blue violet is probably the darkest color I'm going to use. I did use soft navy, which is dark, but I think the blue violet is even darker. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab the sentiment that I'm going to use for this. And to get this two-tone, I actually masked off parts of this so that I could stamp the word amazing with blue violet ink, just like I am that little half circle at the bottom. And then the rest of it is going to be stamped with the Blue Jay ink, I believe. So a little post-it tape was used to mask off the word amazing. We'll ink up the rest of the sentiment. Press that down. And if it doesn't stamp perfectly the first time, this is where using our MISTI comes in so handy, because we can mask it again, ink it up again, remove the masks, and stamp it right one on top of another. So if there's any little faint areas, which there were a couple on mine, I was able to stamp that again. Then I'm going to mask off the top part of the sentiment and stamp the word amazing underneath with blue violet ink. And that's really going to tie into the blue violet at the bottom of the scene and just tie it all together, plus provide a fantastic sentiment. Now, while these backgrounds are really, I'm calling them one layer, I am going to do a couple of little things to make these a little bit more dimensional or special. One is adhering the entire panel that I've trimmed down to 4 inches by 5¼ inches with foam adhesive to a white top fold card base. That's going to leave a nice little white border all the way around, plus give this panel a tiny bit of dimension. And I'm also going to take the sequin and gemstone pack included in the March kit and glue some of those gemstones or jewels and sequins throughout my card. Especially the little gold stars. I think they add a nice little metallic touch. And then there are these little gems. They're not rhinestones. I'm going to call them jewels. And what's so great is they're clear, but they have that transparency to them. But I think they almost have a little bit of a mint coloring to them, which really goes nicely with the colors I chose to use for my card. They look great layered over anything, and so I'm going to add a scattering of these throughout the design as well. So I want to play around with the placement just a little bit, and I don't want to overwhelm the design. I just want to add a few of these here and there to fill in and add that great little dimensional embellishment. I'll peel off the backing paper from the foam adhesive, pop this in place on my top fold card base, And then I had laid all the embellishments out, but I'm going to go ahead and actually secure them now. I wanted to make sure I liked the placement before I committed to gluing them in place. I'm using some Lawn Fawn glue tube adhesive, liquid adhesive, and the crystal katana to easily pick up all these little pieces and place them right where I want them to go. The sentiment reads, "Have I told you lately that you're amazing?" I think this is such an awesome encouragement type of card, fantastic for anyone who maybe needs a little pick-me-up. Next, I'm going to create just another background, and I'm going to speed a little bit faster through this. It's very much what I just showed you before. I'm going to do a little bit different design. There's no right or wrong here, and I'm going to move my sentiment to that bottom right corner. That's part of the reason for switching up the placement of my circular shapes on the background. I planned out where I wanted to put my sentiments first. I'm also going to use two of the phrases from this from the stamp set for this card. We're going to use "You're fantastic, amazing, and incredible," and also "Everyone agreed." I think that's so funny, but awesome. Another great encouragement type card. Another great thing about both of these card designs, these work for male or female. I always like to have some cards on hand to send to whomever, but a lot of them probably are geared a little bit more towards women, so it's always great to have a card that will work for the guys as well. If you wanted to make these maybe a little bit more feminine, you could definitely switch up the colors, and that would change the overall feeling of these. Now for these two sentiments, because they're two separate stamps, I will be stamping them with different ink, but I'm even going to help do a little ombre effect for the word agreed by adding multiple colors of ink to that word, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Using all the same dye ink colors as before. What makes being able to figure out what inks look good together, I highly recommend a swatch book of some sort. I was able to look at my swatches and then just go to my ink cabinet or my ink organizer and pick some inks that I thought would look good. I'm going to fill in just a little circular shape down here in the bottom right corner, but the rest of that is going to be sentiment. And you can even fill in with some smaller circle shapes here and there if you want to. Did a little circle here with some island blue. With the Blue Jay ink, we're going to stamp, the island blue and soft navy. We're going to stamp "Everyone agreed," and I just added that soft navy along the bottom edge for an ombre effect, and then the rest of the sentiment is going to be stamped with High Dive ink. That's that dark teal ink. Just like my other background, we're then going to trim this down. I started with a bigger background. It's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and then I trimmed it down to 4 by 5 1/4. I like to start a little bit bigger. It gives me a little bit more room to play, and then I can decide which sides to trim that extra room off. And then I will pop that up with foam adhesive and add some gemstones to finish off this background as well. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these two one-layer cards featuring the Simon Says Stamp March 2019 card kit. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Simon Says stamps and dies that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.